Hello, I'm Linda Sechrist, the editor and senior staff writer for Natural Awakenings magazine, and I'm here today interviewing Yvette McGlasson for an article that I'm going to be writing in our April issue. So we're going to talk about her background and what it is that she's doing now, how she's been able to apply her years of experience dealing with people to what she does today. So welcome, Yvette. Okay, so let's start a little bit with your background and all the great experience that you've had really in human relations to be able to translate what it is that you've spent so many years dealing with thousands of people and how you bring that to the table today. So first of all, tell me what it is that you're doing today.
Well, my umbrella encompasses wellness these days. With say mental health, I wouldn't say that per se, but more of a mindset, helping people shift their perspectives on themselves to see themselves in a positive light. So I work with people, whether it's one-on-one or also in class environments too. But whether I teach a yoga class, a meditation class, I have clients who come and I work with them one-on-one, helping to shift their mindsets. To reduce anxiety, to reduce stress, to reduce panic, things along those lines that really help people. And then with my functional medicine coaching, I have the ability to help people with their mindsets as it applies to even losing weight. Because we all know that if we see ourselves as still being overweight, even though we lose weight, we won't see the truth of who we've become. So I work with people from a health and wellness aspect, mental, physical, psychological, emotional.
That's a pretty wide berth there. So
it is. And it sounds, in some senses, it sounds a little bit overwhelming, but because anyone who comes to work with me one-on-one it's a relationship that gets cultivated. So I don't just follow a recipe. Of the training that I've had, I listen intuitively. I listen to the space in between the words. And then from there, we co-create and find solutions for people to help them achieve their goals and be their best selves. So it's a cultivation of each individual's strengths that I work with.
So you also do some training for at the local wellness center, which is part of the Naples Community Hospital. So, you're also part of the Blue Zones program. So why don't you tell me about that?
Well, I had started teaching at NCH as a meditation teacher and yoga instructor. They hadn't had meditation. I couldn't even tell you when. I just know it wasn't on the schedule before I came along. And from there, because of my background of public speaking, they actually started to approach me to do some online webinars when COVID-19 hit and really impacted the health and wellness of the employees. There's over 5,000 employees with NCH. They asked if I would put together some programming that would help people manage themselves and better manage themselves and their mental health through all of what was going on with through the hospital. So I started hosting online webinars for the hospital and just finished, actually, we're just finished, it's March now, but I have a full commitment to my calendar this year of doing a whole wellness series of a journey to authenticity. So I'm working with them. And I also, through all of it, because NCH is also Blue Zones organization and who sponsors the Blue Zones program here in Collier County, I thought it was important as someone who teaches there that I would also be a Blue Zones recognized organization too. So during COVID-19, I put that into my my basket and went through all the checklists and became a Blue Zones recognized organization. We had the blue ribbon cutting a couple of months ago now, but yeah, so I will start teaching and sharing my experiences and my presentations with the Blue Zones organization as well.
It's a great organization, and it's certainly done a lot for the collective health of our community.
Yes, that it has.
Well, tell us a little bit about your background, Yvette. I mean, I think you have an interesting background in that you've dealt with thousands of people in your previous career, which certainly gives you the experience to be dealing with people of all ages. So when someone looks at you as a life coach or a health coach and they say, Oh, she just looks like a kid. And your background, you've dealt with 70, 80-year-old people in your previous career. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the first thing I want to acknowledge is that you, as my mother, encouraged me to follow my dreams and manifest my dreams. So, as you always have said, I gave you roots and I gave you wings. And that really encouraged me to grow up watching Julie McCoy on the Love Boat and wanting to be Julie McCoy. But being from Pennsylvania, there was no way I could figure out how that was going to happen. And as they teach us, when you want to manifest and you get caught up in the how, it never is going to happen because you're so worried about what you have to do that the universe can't step in and do for you, right? So as grace would have it, my feet landed on a cruise ship eventually. And through that work, I spent 20 years in the industry and I worked my way up to being a cruise director. And through that, one calculation, we figured that over the 20 years I worked on board and in the industry, I had interacted with over 1 million people. And I really believe what inspired me the most, because people would say, oh, how do you go from the cruise industry into wellness? You know, they're opposite sides of the coin. And yet wellness is a vital part of every cruise experience because they want you to eat well, they want you to exercise. They even have programming these days that really, garners around organics and healthy living and healthy eating. But I believe that because of, number one, the first book that I remember you bringing home was Fit for Life, and learning to eat that way, not using a microwave, cooking fresh, organic, being very aware of supplements and how to, find ways of healing the body from the inside out versus the outside in. It was kind of the way you raised me. And because of that, the shift in working with all those people was an easy transition into wellness. At least in my mind, it was. But I think the biggest thing that really inspired me was because throughout the years of working on board, I would watch our guests come on board. And even on the first day, they would literally walk on board, go straight to guest services and ask about leaving the ship, which was going to be 7, 10, 20 days later. So they hadn't even started their vacation. And then I also heard them say, well, I'll be happy when. I'll be happy when I have my first drink by the pool. I'll be happy when I have my first dinner. I'll be happy when I get to my cabin. I'll be happy when. I will be happy when. Which sent the subtle message that they were not happy now. And I didn't understand it back then. It took time to integrate back into life on land to finally realize the pressures of, commuting to work, the normal 9 to 5, raising a family, taking care of a house. I mean, I lived in a $250 million home on a ship, but somebody cooked my meals, somebody made my bed, somebody did my laundry. It was not a normal environment. So it wasn't until I came home to land and really immersed myself into a land-based position, I began to see why people said, well, I'll be happy when. But it inspired me to want to commit to helping people change their mindset and to open themselves up to being present right now so they could really enjoy their relationships, enjoy their food, enjoy where they were, and not attached to, well, I'll be happy when, which is future based or past based. So through all of that, when I decided to leave the corporate environment and come from cruising to this, and fortunately I made that transition before COVID-19, so that was easy. But at the same time, it was just a natural progression of everything in my life so far, giving me a perspective on humanity that very few people ever would have an opportunity to experience, and use that as the inspiration to help others live better lives now and become their best selves now, and not when in the future.
Not in the future, but now. And I have to say that I recall those, were they called circle trips that you used to do for Colette tours from Boston to Florida and back? For how many weeks were they that you traveled with people on the average age of?
Well, in that time, those Florida circle trips were just over 2 weeks, and that was driving a bus from Boston all the way south to Key West and then back to Boston. And my guests were probably 70, 80, even 90 years old. They were.
Just trying to give people an appreciation for sometimes you don't have to be old to appreciate someone who's older than you and their the things that they have to deal with. So you've had plenty of experience doing that.
Oh my gosh, I had one trip, will never forget this. It was so funny. I was doing Kentucky, Tennessee trips, and we were in Bardstown, Kentucky. We had gone to see the old Kentucky home, and we were overnighting there. So our hotel was a 2-story hotel, and each room emptied out onto the sidewalk, which faced the parking lot. Nothing glamorous about it, but it was clean, it was neat, and it was convenient. So the group I had, they all knew each other. So they would open their doors when we get to a new hotel, and they would have their own happy hour. So it was like golf community only, in this hotel. And they're mixing and mingling and whatnot. So when we got to the hotel, I had to let them know what time we were going to be leaving for dinner and what time for bags out in the morning and what time we're leaving for our next destination the next day. And this husband, I happened to walk past one of the rooms, and he turns to his wife and he said, "Why should I listen to that young whippersnapper?" And I kind of giggled to myself, and because I heard her say, "Well, she is in charge. She is too young to be in charge. She is too young to tell me what to do." So it was moments like that which were so precious. I mean, it was funny, and I thought at the time it used to intimidate me, but you know what? I had to get past it. I had to get through it because I had to be in charge. I had to be responsible. I was responsible for a large group of people and their happiness in those moments. But so funny. But in cruising, whether it was from baby up to 101 and everything in between, I experienced day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year.
For how many years was that?
20 altogether. Yep.
Yeah.
I spent 15 on board and then 5 in corporate.
So you virtually were a public speaker every day.
Yes, I didn't want to be a public speaker when I was a kid. I was very shy, and that's what I think I was. I mean, you might disagree with that. But
your grandmother would.
But I remember when I was becoming a tour guide, we went on this trip up into PEI, Prince Edward Islands. And on the way back, we had to get up one by one and get on the microphone and share a story about ourselves. And I got up there and I got the microphone in my hand. I settled into, a moving bus. You have to figure out how to situate your body so you kind of go with the flow and you get knocked over and falling into people's laps. But I got that mic in my hand. I knew how to settle in almost intrinsically. I knew what to do, and I shared my story, and it was like I'd done it my whole life. And there was no looking back after that.
You were off and running. Well, tell me why you feel that your style of life coaching or wellness coaching is uniquely different than perhaps someone else's style.
That's a really good question. And I believe part of it comes because of the vast experience that I've had. And whether it's in losing weight, whether it's Ayurveda, whether it's yoga, fitness, meditation and mindset, mindfulness, I believe that the diversity of my background is what brings a different perspective to my skills of being a life coach and being a health coach. The philosophy in health coaching is that it's all client-centered, client-focused. The client is the expert. And I fully embrace that. But there are moments where a client will bring something up that they want to do, and I will have information about it. Now, I will ask permission from them to share, but there are a lot of times I'm not comfortable just saying, well, just go look it up. I like to be a source of information to help people, to make it easy for them to recognize that change isn't work. It is actually something that can be fun. So I really believe that's the biggest thing, is because of the diversity of my background and the wide varieties of people that I've met, understanding different cultures, different influences, and what makes people tick. Not that was something I learned in a book, but really working with people to the degree that I have has given me an innate wisdom and understanding of human beings and human behavior that a lot of people don't have. So I think that's where it comes from.
Talk a little bit about the your training in Yoga Nidra, yoga for to be a yoga teacher, and yoga therapy.
With Yoga Nidra, which is a sleep-based meditation experience that's been around for guesstimating 5,000 years. The first introduction to meditation as a practice was one that you had introduced to me in 1994. You gave me my first Yoga Nidra CD, and I still have it to this day. I haven't worn it out. I can still hear the little man say, "Welcome to Yoga Nidra." And I love the practice, and it was great for me because working on a ship, you have such long days. And I used to give myself from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. every day. That was just my own time, whether I worked out, whether I read, whether I meditated, whether I took a nap. It was my way of filling my well so I could go out and be in public and be my best self. So I found that practice was very helpful. But I also recognized it wasn't sustainable because it would relax me, but I could still feel myself in reaction. And not always as responsive as I would have liked to have been, would I have preferred to. So that was 94. And I started practicing with that. And then in 2012, I believe it was 2012, 2011, we had gone to a yoga class, and the teacher that was a senior teacher with the Amrit method. He began class with a form of Yoga Nidra. And I will never forget that the impact that I had in that experience was so profound that at lunchtime, I went over and I said, "What was that?" And he said, "That was Yoga Nidra." And I said, "No, it wasn't." And he said, "Yes, it was." And I said, "Well, not any kind of Yoga Nidra that I'm familiar with, because I've practiced this since 1994. So we're looking at, quite a bit of time between then and now. And I never went to the depth of meditation that I did in that morning. And it inspired me to the degree where I really wanted to go back and get trained in it, because when you understand how to use Yoga Nidra to affect change in your life, you shift from I will be to I am. You shift out of the busyness of the mind, coming back into the body, recognizing that you can feel your reaction in the body long before it becomes externalized. It is an internal experience that you can actually choose from a different level of consciousness how to respond in your life. And when I went home, I was so dedicated to this as a practice. I hadn't even been a teacher. I hadn't even gone to study it, but I knew there's something in me that knew. So within 2 weeks, that was it. I recognized a pattern in me that I actually learned to disrupt just by doing the Yoga Nidra and using the intention that I had, which was about self-acceptance. And that took a trigger out of me within 2 weeks and helped to dissolve it. So that inspired me to become a teacher. And I love the practice because you lay down, it's effortless, absolutely effortless. And I had a student one time who came who I was trying to convince her to try Yoga Nidra. And she kept saying, "Well, Yvette, I've been practicing meditation." I said, I know that. You are TM. And she said, "Yes, for 24 years, I have been practicing TM. I'm good." So just, you know what, just try it once. Just humor me, try it once. And she did. And much like my experience, she came out and she said, "What was that?" And I said, "That was Yoga Nidra." And she said she went so far beyond where she'd ever been in TM. And then she came back and became a teacher as well. So phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal.
It's a phenomenal practice. It changes lives, and
It
it's I don't say it's effortless, but it pretty much is.
Not a whole lot of doing in it. But as a rite of passage, I kind of just went in for in that time of my life. I was living in an ashram, a yogic community here in Florida, and then from there, it just seemed a natural thing, which was to do the first 10 days of yoga teacher training to learn the science of yoga, how yoga off the mat really can help us manage our days and manage our minds. I had no intention at that time to become a yoga teacher, but was inspired to go back and finish the second half of the training. That was in 2012. I got into the Yoga Nidra, really was just immersed in that practice. And then the marriage of the two as a beautiful intersection is yoga therapy, or yoga therapeutics, they call it as well. It's a body psychology, and recognizing that every word, every internal dialogue we've ever had with ourselves, things that we've heard about ourselves from other people, things that we perceive about ourselves that are said or not unsaid, that all gets stored in the body. Those memories are stored in the body, and they're held in the cells of our body. And the body has no idea whether that pterodactyl tried to eat me 10 minutes ago or 10 years ago. The body only knows the sensation that's happening right now, and it reacts to it. It goes into that fight or flight. So when you work with someone from a therapeutic yoga level, and it's a very specialized experience, it helps to release those memories stored in the body, freeing you to be then to shift back into a more peaceful and balanced state. And the body can heal itself from the inside out, not just the outside in.
It's a miraculous thing, is all I can say. I've experienced it, so I can actually say that over since 1994, the little yoga guy, which we can thank a friend of ours for introducing us to that person.
Yeah.
It's when you can have changes in your life that you don't have to be thinking about all the time, or posting signs all around your house, or doing affirmations. It's the easier, I'm going to say it's the easier, but it's such a beautiful gradual change that sometimes people don't know until they're actually into a situation where they would have reacted before, and now they're responding to the situation, which brings about a whole different response from the person that they're dealing with.
When you say that, I was just asked recently how quickly I saw results in my own life from this practice, and just like what I've shared with this, I told the person it had been 2 weeks, and in order to give it some more flesh, so to speak, I shared the experience, and that I said, I practiced, every single day, and that's the thing is with Yoga Nidra, 11 consecutive sessions, and that's 11 straight days. You can actually begin to rewire the brain, and I don't want to go into the whole science of it, but
Sure.
at the time when I first was introduced to this, I was working for the owner of a company, which is a very, very, very high pressured, high pressure job. I was on speed dial, and we're talking $1 billion industry. So it's not something that you can just say, oh, and I know it's all relative, obviously, because if you have your own business, even 20 bucks can feel like $1 billion, right? So I'm not trying to discount anybody who's listening, but at the same time, when it's $1 billion and you have sales, you've got products, you have requirements, I mean, it just is a lot of pressure. So I had the training, I came back. Now, as anyone can verify, is that you got your old cell phone and someone calls you, and and you can feel your body just kind of go into that, okay, I'm not going to answer the phone. That fight or flight sets in, right?
Right.
So I would see my boss's name flash up on my phone when he would call me. And my first thought was, oh my gosh, what does he want? What did I do wrong? Is he going to yell at me? Am I in trouble? That was my first go to, which I'm sure I'm not the only person that has ever had this. And I would let it go to voicemail. I was working remotely. He was in New York City and I was in Tennessee. So I let it go to voicemail and I would call him back later. So after I listened to his voicemail. So within 2 weeks, though, my phone would ring. I would see his name on my phone and I would pick it up. I didn't let it go to voicemail anymore. I actually just picked it up. I recognized that the reaction in me was diminishing, it was dissolving. And I pick up the phone and say, hi, how are you? And my demeanor was such that whatever was changing in me, inside of me, was changing in the resonance that came from me to him. And it altered our relationship. And it was one we always had always gotten along really well, and he was very respectful, don't get me wrong. But months later, I was sitting in his office in New York, and he said, Yvette, you're the only person that can get around. And I immediately become calm. I immediately become peaceful. Any busyness of the mind, I just calm down. And so, and he's like, I don't know what it is. I don't know what's different about it, but it is different. I never told him it was Yoga Nidra, mind you, but that that happened to me, I know it can happen to anybody.
Well, talk about the evolution of your career. You've moved on to incorporate something else in what you do, health insurance.
Mhm.
Why that? What made you decide to go in that direction?
Well, in wanting to help people, I recognize that you have to want to change. You have to want to get well. You have to want to lose weight. You have to want to change your mindset. But there are people who don't, and that's completely fine with me. But I wanted to be able to offer people who didn't prioritize their own health and wellness an option, which was, if you're not going to take care of yourself in that capacity and choose differently with how you eat, exercise, changing in your relationships, using the 5 pillars of wellness when it comes time for functional medicine, that I wanted to have a sixth pillar, which was health insurance. So they would have the peace of mind to have really good coverage. And when it came time for any kind of health crisis or any kind of accident with their family, their loved ones, and themselves. So it really, to me, was a way to flesh out and add another facet, another dimension to my business and what I could offer to people. So you don't want to go on a diet, totally fine. I No judgment, no comment. Don't want to do that, you still have to have good coverage because something could go wrong. So that's why I got my license to sell health insurance, and then got licensed under U.S. Health, which is a division of United Healthcare, which is the largest healthcare company, actually globally. They have over 20 million participants as part of that United Healthcare family. Pretty awesome.
That is a rather large one and happens to be the one that I'm insured by. So
There you go. See?
I'm familiar with it. Is there anything that you feel in particular about what it is you do that is the most important thing you would want to be known for, recognized for?
You raised me to be a unique individual, and I believe that my relatability to a vast not variety of the population, it's really hard to put a specific label on me because of it. And each thing that I do is just a facet of my personality, so to speak, and my interests, and really my drive to want to help people um, get out of their own way. I really believe that there's so much more to life, and when you begin to focus on solutions instead of problems, you begin to see the glass as half full and no longer half empty. And when you change your perspective, even just 2 millimeters to the right or to the left, up or down, it is such a relief. Um, I shared this recently, was when I was tour guiding and I was working in Scandinavia. And one of my countries we went to was Iceland. And I used to in the buildup of going to Iceland, everybody has this idea it's covered in ice and this forests and sheep and glaciers and waterfalls, and it's magnificent and it's all that. But I would say, okay, what I'm going to do, let's say we're in Iceland and you're lost in the forest. It's dark, you can't see the path in, you can't see the path out. You know that there's wild animals around you. You need to get home. It's hungry, you're tired, and you're stuck in the forest. You can't find your way out. And it's nightfall, and it's getting closer, and it's getting colder. And you can just kind of feel the fear building up in you, like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get home? So if you're lost in the Icelandic forest, what are you going to do? You're going to stand up. because every tree in Iceland was cut down by the Vikings. So the Icelandic forest is only about 3 feet tall.
I
So
didn't know.
so just by standing up, you step out of the stream and you look at the fears in a completely different way. So you can find your way home.
That's a great way to present something to someone, to get them to shift their thinking, because
Mm-hmm.
they're thinking that they're amidst these tall trees and they can't see beyond them, and
Yep.
all you have to do is stand up.
Yep, that's it.
And so when you do what you are, it comes natural. There's no trying to swim uphill or change anything. And so if it seems to me that a lot of what you do is just who you are. And that is very difficult to put a finger on and describe and give a word to.
Yeah.
But I would say that it has to do with authenticity and integrity. And you can talk a little bit about, you and your husband are both great cooks. You say you're a cook and he's a chef, but you're pretty on, and you've both gone to the same Yoga Institute for your training. So it's nice to know that you walk your talk. There are people who say one thing and do another. And I recall the woman who wrote a book that I was really smitten with for years. And she came to speak where I was working at the time. And it turned out that I said to her, "Oh, you must be so happy that your husband endorses, he's a doctor." And she said, "Oh, he doesn't believe in anything that I write about."
Oh, wow.
And she was a heavy smoker. She would go outside and chain smoke and come back into the health food store. So the people, that's a dichotomy. That's just, a conflict. So talk a little bit about your relationship and how you live, your own personal lifestyle.
Everything that I work with my clients on are things that I would be willing to do, have done. I would never take someone in a place that I was not willing to go myself. But when it comes time for personally, do you want to go? I mean, every morning we're up in the morning early, start the day with meditation. Then it's on to lemon water, fresh squeezed lemon juice into a glass of water. That transitions into freshly juiced celery juice. Then from there, we do protein shakes, which are sustainable. Those we work through isogenics. They're a whole plant-based organic line that they've introduced. Beyond that, we eat organic. We aren't militantly organic because we do eat out, and you can't guarantee that where you're going, they're going to have organic food. But I really believe if you've got balance in your life, then it's okay. The body knows how to take care of itself. So our meals, I work from home, so that's a blessing. He is out in the community, obviously. But we take supplements. We're very aware of our bodies, what's going on. We honor our bodies, especially. So if we're tired, we sleep. If we're drained, we shift what we're eating. At this point, we both live a vegetarian, pescatarian from time to time, but predominantly a vegetarian diet. And that's just by our choice. I was a meat eater for years. I'm an O blood type, so I'm definitely the world's carnivore. Definitely falls under my category. But I have found that by eating plant-based, it's really changed my sleeping patterns. It's changed my energy levels. I really have a very balanced diet that comes with it. But in our relationship, though, when it comes time for how the two of us interact, because we both came from diverse backgrounds and we met through the foundation of yoga, but the science of yoga, which is taught by the Amrit method, the IM method. Because of that, we understand how to use the principles in yoga to work through our relationship challenges. It's not so much of a you said this and you did this. It is recognizing that whatever the other person did that triggers something in me that is bothering me, it's really the seed lies within me. He's just the weather pattern. So it's working through that without blaming the other person for making me feel bad about myself or me making him feel bad about himself. We work through those things. We dialogue, we talk, um, and we share it from a perspective of, well, the story I'm telling myself is this. And, that way you're not saying, well, you did this bothers me. But it's having healthy boundaries, it's honoring each other as individuals, supporting the other when he's growing and I'm not, supporting me when I'm growing and he's not. But really, when we grow together, it's that much stronger and powerful. And it's really co-creative. I'm so blessed. I really feel so blessed to have a partner who meets me where I'm at and just nurtures me as much as he wants to nurture himself. And it's really it's phenomenal. I can't even begin to say how lucky I am. But I will say I do believe from the bottom of my heart that I could never have seen him this way unless I had done the work on myself. And I recognized that the answers that I search for are not lying in someone else. They actually lie within me. And many years ago, I came to the realization that I was the one who I was waiting for all along. And when I recognized that and I nurtured that within me, it was almost an integration level that I had never experienced. But if I hadn't had that, I would never have been able to see him, to meet him where he was at or where I was at the time, and be where we are today.
It's always a good story to hear, especially for other people who are struggling, especially during Corona when people are on lockdown and they're 24/7, 7 days a week, 30 days a month together. Yes. And since I know that we've all trained in the Amrit Yoga method, why don't you talk a little bit about how that is different than the typical, I know when I go to yoga classes that most people just are thinking in terms of postures, but that's not all. There's two sides to the Amrit method, which I think make it unique for me and anybody else who does it. But do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. From the Amrit method, what makes it, I wouldn't say I can use unique because it is unique. When people practice it, they come back and say, wow, I mean, what was that? But because you are cultivating sensation in the body and you are cultivating an awareness of sensation in the body, that is something that you have the first half of the posture and you have the second half of the posture. So the first half of the posture is being guided into your postures, whether you're doing eagle, whether you're doing dancing Shiva, whether you're dancing tree pose, whatever the pose is, it doesn't matter what the pose is. It's allowing the guidance into it in a very safe way with a full body alignment, with full body awareness. And then when you hold the posture, you are then still moving with your breath. You're very aware of your breath. And the breath is the bridge between the mind and the heart that will bring you back into your body. So once you have transitioned out of the pose, you then come to a place of stillness, a place of balance, and then you feel the sensations that are moving through the body, the energy that moves through your body as it's releasing the tension that's the holding that's been in the body for such a long time. So those are different elements of it, is the inner world, the inner exploration, to recognizing that there's so much more to the body than what we take for granted. And when you begin to recognize sensation in the body, when you're on the mat, I'll put it that way, when you're in your life and you begin to recognize sensation first, it's the first recognition of something that's coming up and out of you that could turn into a reaction or remain as a response. So when you begin to, if I have somebody who is who suffers from panic or anxiety, you always feel it in your body. And yet people who suffer from intense panic attacks or intense anxiety are so disconnected between their heads and their bodies. And Amrit method brings you back into your body to honor the body, to feel your way through your life from without a label of it, without having to identify the name of the feeling, just to feel it as a feeling. And that becomes a witness perspective, a place of observation, so that when you're in it, you can step out of the story, observe it, and then choose response over reaction.
Good explanation.
Thank you. I think Gurudev would be very proud of you for that one.
He definitely would. It's to me, it's the only style of yoga that really changes lives. You can change your body with any style of yoga, especially hot yoga, but you can't change your life with just postures. It has to go deeper than that.
Do you know, when I was at a program, and we had a yoga class one morning, and one of the students just decided to lay down in shavasana, and she fell asleep because she was snoring. It didn't bother me, but it bothered one of the students so much that after the class, she came to complain to me about it. And she said, "This is really bothering me. I'm really upset about this." And I said, "Well, congratulations." And that was not the answer she was looking to hear. And I said, "Look, that young woman who fell asleep next to you, but she didn't follow your instructions. It doesn't matter. Your experience on the mat is your experience. I am not somebody who teaches that you have to do exactly as I tell you. I'm not a militant teacher. If she needed that, it's what her body asked her to do. But what she represents is far beyond your yoga class, because there's something in your life that somebody's doing that's causing this trigger, and she only represents that." And that's truly, when you are bothered by something when you're on the mat, it means, number one, your mind is elsewhere.
Elsewhere.
Yep. And number two is there's a seed, a root cause to that reaction. And that's what you have the opportunity in the Amrit method, is to discover that and keep digging at that same hole.
That's important, to dig at the same hole, not 50 other different holes.
Yep.
So I feel like we have probably covered all the ground that we needed to, but I was wondering if there was anything that you feel that we missed that you would like to bring forward now, that you would want everyone to know.
I have an announcement, which I'm very excited. I wrote a story for Chicken Soup for the Soul. They have a new release coming out, and the title is Chicken Soup for the Soul, Be You. So I wrote a story, and it was my first time of stepping out on a limb and sending something in, and it's being published. So I have I'll be included in that book, Chicken Soup for the Soul, Be You, which I'm so excited about. And I still can't believe, because even when I sent the story, and then they came back and said, "Can you verify that this really happened to you?" And I thought, oh, you know what, just having to verify is enough. But I talked myself into saying, just put it out there, because there are other women who need to hear this story too.
Does that mean I get a signed book?
Well, yes, I'll autograph a copy just for you.
Okay, well, thank you for the time and for the lovely interview. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Hope you did too.
I did.
We'll be looking. You can look for the article in the April issue.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your time. I know time is extremely valuable, and it's the one commodity we can never get back. So honoring time and valuing time is something to be put above and beyond everything else. So thank you.